Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. Let's talk about China a bit. Received a request to do a little bit more on it, and I looked through my stuff. I've got a little more to say, not much, so I have to refer you to video 38, I think it was, in the Capitalism series, where I addressed this issue about China. But I did have one or two things I want to say. First of all, a lesson from this book, Soviet Economic Development by Mazur, M-A-Z-O-U-R, published in 1967. I learned from that book, which I read in high school, that an economy can have phenomenal growth when it's in its early stages. For example, the Soviet Union tripled, had a 300% rise in electricity production in like 1927 or whatever, you know. Or that's just pulling that out of my hat. This book's full of all kinds of little stats like that. But how could America ever increase its electricity production 300%? Then the question is, why would it ever need to do that in a single year? It wouldn't and couldn't. But the Soviet Union needed to. Now, it did that by installing, it turns out, 1,500 diesel generators. Now, 1,500 diesel generators are purchased by Americans every year just to put, different places for buildings, backups for hospitals and stuff like that. So to add just a year's worth of purchase of diesel generators to the electrical grid in Russia increases their electrical output by 300%. They can't keep up that rate of growth. Later on, it takes massive amounts of capital investment to get a 5% increase. So these phenomenal growth rates we see in China, where they're adding 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% per year, year after year after year after year, that's because all they have to do is get somebody out of the field and just put them on some sort of machine where they push a button or pull a lever, and they've increased their productivity 10 or 50 or 100 times. So they're literally taking, they've got a whole pool of labor that they're taking out of the dark ages, out of the agricultural bygone ages. They've been on these rice paddies since before the introduction of writing into human culture, and they are now being put in factories and stuff. So that can't continue forever. I just take for granted that everyone understands this, but perhaps they don't. Some people might be under the delusion or impression that China's growth could continue at 10% because China's got a new way, a different way. As a matter of fact, nothing could be further from the truth. China exhibits the exact same pattern that every other economy, total agrarian economy, that suddenly comes into development experiences. It's a much easier development, and it's actually good for the people if it's done in a free market. But if it's done by state planning, as this book will tell you more, it is a complete atrocity. Now then, from National Geographic, this one is March 2004. Cities with China's worst air, as calculated by the government, are mostly in the north, where blowing dust combines with industrial pollutants. Most Chinese live in the east, an area transected by polluted rivers, inadequate wastewater treatment, and groundwater depletion that have led to a national water crisis. Now that's not just hyperbole, because there's a town where they process old computer parts and stuff, where they truck the water in because the water supply is completely unsafe. More than 25 million workers are in regular contact with toxic dust and poisonous materials. And then it asks, what good is money if you can't breathe the air? Well, what good is the air if you're dead? Bad air quality caused nearly 2 million deaths in the past decade, probably more. I don't know how they get this factor, but probably more. People who might have been once worried that we're going to run out of coal, because every single one of our trains runs on coal, and every single one of our houses is heated with coal, and what happens when we're going to run out? The coming coal crisis, peak coal production, all that nonsense. We shut a whole bunch of coal fields down. We've been opening them up recently because we just won't go the last 15-20 years. The energy crisis in the world because of China coming on the scene has caused coal fields to open up that have been closed since the 40s and 50s. We've got currently a 300 or 400 year supply of coal just in the fields we know of. We aren't even really looking for it. China's got a massive supply of coal, and it still manufactures steam trains. So that's part of their problem, is their massive use of coal. It brings the air quality down drastically. Coal is very, very filthy, dirty fuel. Petroleum is a much cleaner fuel than coal. So just going from using coal to petroleum cleaned up our cities. People believe our smog by the interstate's terrible and stuff. Not compared to everyone with a coal fireplace and steam trains running through the place. Here's some statistics about America versus China. Area. China is 3,705,000 square miles, according to National Geographic here, and the USA is 3,717,000. China's population, they put at 1,288,000,000. Now this is 2004 issue we're looking at. Whereas the United States is 291,500,000. We now know that to be over 300 million. China has 348 persons per square mile. America has 78 persons per square mile. Now most of the Chinese live near the coast, and most of them live in the east. So that actually means the western part is very, very sparsely inhabited, and the eastern part is very, very densely inhabited. Energy consumption, they put at 880 kilograms of oil equivalent in China, and 7,960 kilograms oil equivalent in America. So about a 10 to 1. Let's call China's 880 and America's 8,000. Tobacco use. 35% of Chinese smoke, 23% of Americans smoke. Meat consumption. Chinese eat about 100 pounds a year. Americans eat about 270 pounds per person. Paper consumption. The Chinese consume about 70 pounds, Americans about 700. The average number of persons per room. 1.1 in China, 0.5 in America. So on average in America we've got 2 rooms per person. In China they got 1 room per person. Water use per person. In China 116,000 gallons. Agricultural, industrial, and domestic water use. Water use 116,000 in China, 484,000 in America. China has 300 TV sets per thousand. America has 850 per thousand. China has 16 vehicles per thousand people. America has 774 vehicles per thousand people. China's probably got a lot more than 16 per thousand now. It's probably more like 100. And now it asserts here that the hope of many Chinese is to copy the lifestyles of affluent city people all over the world. So as they come up out of the agrarian background, they want to live the way they imagine people in cities live. They don't want to preserve their cultural way of life. They don't want to hold on to their roots. They don't want to keep their identity.